How many times have you gone into a game thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome, but then it isn't? Because either you had higher expectations and you set yourself the bar a little too high, or maybe because you like the theme but the game is just not that good, or maybe because the game is just not for you. Whatever it is, you leave the table disappointed and think to yourself, what am I doing with my life? Here are 10 games I wanted to like but didn't. But this does not mean they're bad games, not at all. Well, actually, there's one bad game on this list. Anyway, most of these are good games, they're just not for me. Some of them I did enjoy, but not as much as I wanted to. Let's start out with an easy one. Number 10 is Photosynthesis. This is a beautiful game with a great production and a lovely theme. You have this field where you're planting trees, and every round, as you all know, the sun spins around the earth and the trees you have will collect sunlight, and depending on how much they have collected, it's how many points you have to spend on actions. And there's various size trees. You start out with a small tree, and as the game goes on, you can grow them into bigger trees. But the thing is, bigger trees will cast longer shadows, preventing any trees in the sunlight spot to collect sunlight, meaning you won't get as much sunlight as you were expecting. And this can be a very mean game. I mean, you can plant trees just to overshadow the other players' trees. I tend to dislike this kind of mean games, but in this game, besides being mean to the other players, if you're not careful, you can be mean to yourself and cast shadows on your own trees. Number 9, it's an IP co-op game. It's Dark Souls. I actually wanted to like this one. And I did. For a while. Unfortunately, it's just not a good game. I really like the video game, but the board game adaptation doesn't quite reflect that. I mean, it's very grindy, but it's also very limited. You can't get the equipment you need, that's all very random. And if you die, you go back to the beginning, and you'll have to fight your way through the rooms you've been before, without being given the choice whether or not you want to. The only interesting aspect about this game is the boss battling part. The boss behavior cards are very well made. Although the way you choose to deal with it could have been polished a bit more. All in all, it's very unfortunate, but you kinda have to expect this when turning a video game into a tabletop version. Number 8 is Mercado de Lisboa. Mercado is one of the spin-offs of the big Lacerda games, this one being Lisboa. This game takes one element from the big game, which is the city building part, and tries to make its whole focus around it. So you're building shops in this marketplace and then getting customers to come and buying what they're looking for, and preferably only from you. But the game, it's so boring, it's so bland. Oh, where should I open this shop? Well, ideally in a row or column where there's no other players, so it's cheaper. And where should I place this customer? Ideally where it gives me the most money and none to the other players. This is so not interesting at all. You feel like you're doing very little on your turn. I'm so mad, this game is rubbish. I was hoping this was good, coming from a designer I really like and a spin-off of a game I enjoy, but it's just disappointing. Number 7 is Le Havre. This is a resource management, worker placement game where you're building stuff, you're collecting resources to upgrade them and then sell them for a profit, and the resource stack on every spot grows bigger as the game goes by. So on your turn you can either collect the resources on a single spot and take the whole stack of resources there, or you can place one of your workers on a building and do their action. And you usually have a ton of great choices on your turn, I really appreciate that. For me, there's a couple of things that don't feel quite right. First off, the game goes up to 5 players, but you shouldn't play this at 5 players. This is a 2-player game, 3 at best, because over the course of the game you'll be moving your ship with each turn you take, but the ships leapfrog over the other ships, meaning at higher player count you'll only be taking 1 action per round. And that's pretty sad. And at the end of every round, you need to pay increasingly amounts of food. And if you don't already have a good food engine going on, you will always be lagging behind. I feel like every round I'm just doing enough to keep myself alive and try not to get loans. I am aware that a good strategy is to get loans and then pay them off by the end of the game. But I don't know, I feel like I'm always playing against the game rather than the other players. I believe this game is more of an acquired taste. You probably won't like it the first time, the second you might do a little better, and over time you might learn to love it. I just haven't got to that stage yet. Number 6, it's CO2 Second Chance. So this game has an amazing production with a very unique theme, where players are trying to control global pollution by building infrastructures and talking in summits. It's a fairly complex Lacerda game. And by the way, I'll be talking about the co-op mode, which I feel is the right way to play this game. Because if you let the CO2 level reach a certain threshold, you will lose the game. And this is true both in the competitive and in the co-op mode. Except in co-op mode, you're all fighting for the common cause. Because in competitive... So, someone needs to do that action to keep the pollution at bay, but no one wants to be that guy. No one wants to waste an action to actually do that. And eventually everyone ends up losing the game. Looking past all of that, the co-op mode, which is the way to go, feels like it's on rails. There's no room for error. So by the end of this decade we must build this structure on these continents to meet this objective and keep the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere at a manageable level. So who can make a proposition? I can, because I have this card. And who can build the basic infrastructure? I can. Okay, so I'll build the matching power plant then. It's so very tight, there's just too much to do and not enough time for the players to deviate from what needs to be done. Because each turn I must do this action and that player must follow up with that action and so on and so forth. Otherwise, we all lose the game. Oh, I really wanted to like this one. Number 5 is Oath. I still don't know what this game is about or what the theme is. But I appreciate that this is almost a living game that changes from session to session. The way the game ends on a given match, it's the way it starts on the next one. Plus the victory conditions change from game to game, and with these two aspects combined, no two games of Oath will ever be the same. There's some area control and a few dice being rolled, which I usually dislike, but I'm okay with that because that makes for a small portion of the game. In fact, I like almost everything about this game mechanically. What I don't like is the motif behind all of this. It's very political and it's what keeps me from coming back to this game. In a game, any game, I need to understand what I'm doing so I can make a thematic connection between everything, but this game is just too convoluted for that. I had really high expectations for this one. I enjoy Vast, I love Root, but this one just didn't deliver for me. Number 4 is another co-op game, and a moderately complex this one, and really hard to beat, and I'm talking about Robinson Crusoe. So your shipwreck's stranded on an island and all you gotta do is survive. And maybe get a fire ready for when a ship passes by in the distance. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because to survive, you need to gather materials, craft equipment and deal with events that happen every day. This is an efficiency game with worker placement at its core. You have just a couple of workers each round and you need to plan and decide how to best use them. Because, again, there's a lot to do and very little time. You can place both workers in a single action spot. In fact, if you do, you guarantee that the action will be successful, because sometimes you just can't risk it. And other times you need to split up and get a lot of stuff done. But it doesn't always go as planned. Most likely you will take a wound or get a complication you need to deal with sooner or later. And then if you start getting a lot of things going wrong, it snowballs, making the scenario pretty impossible to win. I usually love this kind of games, trying to figure out the puzzle, but this game punches and beats you down, and if you try to get up, it kicks you some more. Number 3 is Nemesis. So this is Alien the board game, where you are the crew of a ship that's been outrun by aliens. You're all slowly pacing through the ship to find out what's happening, and sometimes you hear a noise from over there. And there's a really nice atmosphere over this game. But for me there's two things about Nemesis. One, its semi-co-op nature, and 2, it can be a very lengthy game. Those two combined, it doesn't quite work. Because although you're all in this together, each player has their own secret agenda they must fulfill to win the game. And more than one player can win the game, which is fine. But sometimes you must go to such lengths to do so. Like, say, has to push one of your fellow partners into a room full of aliens because they're dead weight, and then you realize you can't trust anyone. And then there might be player elimination in a potentially long game. This is one of those games where 1 or 2 players will have a good time and the rest will have a miserable experience. I was really hoping to like this one, but there's all these factors that probably won't make me come back to it. Number 2 is a huge game with an amazing production. It is Dwellings of Eldervale. I really like the dynamic on this one. On your turn, you either place a worker or you recall all of your workers. And depending on the type of tile you place your worker on, that dictates the action you can do. You can get resources, and then you're converting those resources to builds or maybe to get more workers. And when you recall them, and this is really cool, you get to place them on your own cards in front of you for even more actions. Everything sounds good so far. Except there's one tiny little thing that annoys me to death, which is combat. So when you're fighting something, you're rolling a certain amount of dice determined by how many and what type of units you have there, among a few other things. and then you compare only the highest value die on each side. So I could be rolling 6 dice and have a bad roll with my highest number being a 4, while the other player or monster could get lucky and get a 6 with only 3 dice. This is mind-boggling. It's so random. For me, this combat system just ruins the game completely. And finally, number 1. Okay, let me start by saying I need to give this game another go. I played this about 4 years ago, and at that time I kind of enjoyed it, but I didn't like it as much as I wanted to. And at that time it wasn't as hot as it is right now. It's Brass Birmingham. The game happens during the Industrial Revolution and has some very interesting mechanics. So you're building industries mainly. When you build something that produces resources, they stay on the map and can be used by any player, unless there's demand on the market for it. And once you exhaust those resources, you flip the tile to the other side and the owner gets some kind of benefit. There's a lot going on, but mainly you're building industries, managing connections and resources, and selling products. And this is all card driven. On your turn you're doing 2 actions, and for each action you do, you discard a card. All the cards have some kind of location on them, and for most actions the locations don't matter. And that's fine, I like all of that. But then the first part of the game ends. And what this means is you're kinda resetting the board and starting all over again. Which is what I don't like about this game. I don't want my stuff destroyed and having to start all over again. I get it, I know it's very thematic, going from one era to another, but no, just no. I don't want my stuff removed from the map just to start all over again. But as I said, I need to give this game another go. I get it, why it's so popular, but right now it's just not for me. Alright, that's it for now, thank you so much, and until next time.